Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's the Tuesday Bulletin, and I'm sitting in for Natasha. And today I'm with Liam Carrigan over in Japan and Lawrence Conley, who is now known affectionately as the Big L. If you come to a Acsom live event, you might find out why, Lawrence. It was a good night, wasn't it? Friday night, Gordon Strachan. What was your memorable moments of that?
That Missy played 4 times, mate. I mean, Gordon, he's just so open, honest, funny, engaging, and you'll admit, Celtic. He was a Hibs fan growing up, wasn't he? But
yes.
He totally loves Celtic now, doesn't he? And you just think of the way he conducts himself. He never has a bad word to say about the club. What he done for us at the time. We're half in the wage bill. We're losing some huge players.
Yes.
And 2 last 16 finishes.
Mm-hmm.
In the Champions League. Yeah, you think it was absolutely marvellous for us. Just the appreciation he has for the club just shines through from him, doesn't it?
It does shine through. That was the big thing. Liam, we're going to be talking about some big stories coming out of Celtic Park. And it's not doom and gloom. Neither is that top you're wearing. Tell us about that St. Pauli jersey.
This actually luckily just arrived this afternoon, just in time for today's show. It's a St. Pauli special edition jersey from... I can't remember if it was this season just past or the season before, but I picked it up in a wee online sale, and it's certainly colourful, isn't it?
It is colourful. It is a good design, obviously, and I think that if you pay attention to my mugs, I've got the mug. I've got the same range of mug, St. Pauli. Yes, we're going to be talking about...
2 mugs on me today, it could be said.
It could be. It could be. Kyogo, massively positive news. That was one thing I would say, Lawrence, actually, about Strachan. At the end of the night, we obviously open up the floor to the audience to ask questions. And one question came in about the player that Gordon felt didn't maximise his potential at the club. And he says, I'm not even going to answer that. I want to keep it positive. Let's keep it positive. It was brilliant. And this is kicking off with a positive. And that positive is that Kyogo has just signed a new 4-year deal. That'll keep him at the club until he's 32 years of age. Should he see out the 4 years, and there's no reason why he may not. And here's a new stat for us, Liam. He is one of only 3 players to have scored 34 or more goals for Celtic in a single campaign in the last 20 years. Who are the other 2?
Lee Griffiths.
Yes.
And Gary Hooper?
Henrik Larsson.
Right,
Henrik just makes it into the last 20 years. Yeah, I mean, that's the impact he's had. He's won 5 trophies. He has played in 3 cup finals, scoring 5 cup final goals. This allays some of the fears, doesn't it, Liam, that we were in for a mass exodus?
I mean, it's it's definitely we don't want to lose. We didn't want to lose Jota, but that's done now, and we got plenty of money for him, so that was well done. If you had I'm a bit biased in my view here, being where I am, but if you said to me, look, one of them's going to go, the other one's going to sign a 4-year extension, I would say, thanks, Jota, see you later. So I'm delighted that Kyogo is staying on, and I think it bodes well for hopefully the other Japanese players as well. Because I think it could have been a domino effect that if one had went, they would have all went. So the fact that the most high profile of our Japanese contingent has said he's here for the long haul will hopefully sway any of the others that might be reconsidering their future at the moment.
Yeah, a few seasons ago, Lawrence, I've said this a few times, we all became body language experts looking at the sideline to try and understand the chemistry and the dynamic between Neil Lennon and John Kennedy, etc. And yesterday I seen a wee clip, obviously first day back at training, and someone was saying, Kyogo doesn't look happy in this clip. And I'm thinking, come on, lads, give us a break. And of course, he is happy and he is staying. What do you make of Liam's comments? Because obviously there are some concerns about Hatate and also Maeda staying at the club. What do you think of that, Lawrence?
Look, first of all, I think, Kyogo made it easier on the rest because, he was an instant success. It's made the rest of the Japanese boys, their path easier. People accepted him a lot easier because, Kyogo came in with such a bang. The players will come and go. Jota's went, we've got decent money. I never really saw him take a game by the scruff of the neck and win the game. Yeah, he was an entertainer, scored some big goals, but like you maybe look to the League Cup final, and Kyogo gets a double. You might be asking which one because he's in the habit of doubles in League Cup finals. But he absolutely, his first one, he dominated that game by himself, didn't he? He turned up for this. So yeah, I'm in agreement with Liam that out of the two, keep Kyogo over Jota all day long. The other boys, if they're interested in going, I'm sure Brendan will sit them down, and if he thinks they fit his system, it's up to him to persuade them to stay. But Michael Nicholson's done some job, with the reported fee for Jota. So if they go, they won't be leaving on the cheap. Both of them, I think, particularly Hatate's he's a bit younger, so he's got more potential to be fulfilled. If they go, we've got money to spend, on top of what's already a large transfer pot. So it'll be interesting to see if they do believe that, I don't know, £200,000 a week in Saudis worth swapping Celtic Park for. It's kind of a hard argument. Jota wasn't born a Celtic fan. He's on, what was it, 24 grand? And he goes to 200,000 tax free. But if either Maeda or Hatate, succumb to that lure, you've got to trust in Brendan and Tosh and the scouting team to identify players of the right calibre to come in and replace them. To take us further in Europe to do something.
I think that there is a renewed trust in that backroom team, isn't there, Liam? When you look at the records under Ange Postecoglou, Ange done brilliantly well, not to take the focus away from him, but a big part of that was that we've got a recruitment team and it is working for the club. It has worked over the last couple of seasons. And, Brendan Rodgers wasn't coming into this job blind. We would have known about certain players having interest. We would have known that. And he would have known at what stage we were with negotiations, for example, with Kyogo. So I don't really have any great concerns myself, even if we do lose one or two, which was Andy's words. We'll come back to that. But what I wanted to ask you before we move on to Jota, Liam, is on the Japanese contingent. I think we've kind of given up on Ideguchi. Kyogo's just signed a new deal. Hatate, let's hope he stays. Maeda, I would hope he stays. What do you make next season of the futures when it comes to Kobayashi and Iwata, from what you've seen? I think Kobayashi had a bit of a rough time at the end of the season there.
I think pre-season is going to be crucial for Kobayashi. He needs to show the new manager that he's worthy of being around. Like you said before, the fact that Kyogo and then later Daisen and Hatate had done so well for Celtic, it allowed Kobayashi and Iwata to come in and get that wee bit of breathing space to bed in. I think Iwata has shown enough already that he's a player that can be trusted to step into the first team next season if need be. Kobayashi isn't quite there yet. I believe he will be there eventually, but at the moment it's still up in the air for him. I'm put it this way, I'm much more confident in Iwata going into this new season than I am in Kobayashi. I think Iwata will emerge as a big player for us. Kobayashi could emerge as a big player for us, but I think it's still there's still a bit of uncertainty about him.
Mm-hmm. It will be. There's going to be players. Of course, it always happens with managers. Certain players are resurrected, for example, and others are not fancied. I remember when Neil Lennon came in, and one of our star players who had done so well under Brendan Rodgers was Scott Sinclair. He was not fancied under Neil Lennon. He barely played under Lenny. So that's what happens. It's just natural. And I will be looking at both Kobayashi and Iwata with some interest. I've seen enough in Iwata to think that he can do a job in the midfield, certainly. Kobayashi, I'm not so sure. I've just not seen it. I know that you have over in Japan, Liam, so hopefully he can get through that early period that was maybe a bit of a culture shock for him. It was maybe roughhouse tactics and all that kind of stuff that he's not used to. He'll need to get used to that if he wants to be a success in Scottish football. But it does lead us on to Jota, and I want to bring in some of the comments that are coming in. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. In my absence, I was watching with interest every single day the Bulletin. James expertly presenting it to such a level that people were saying, Paul, just stay away. James can be the host from now. Thanks, guys. That's really good of you. But you were coming in your droves, and it's always great to see James Boy 68, you're on the YouTube. Thanks for subscribing and commenting. Jota, too young to be missing out on the Champions League. We'll come back to that because obviously there is a significantly sized carrot in front of him, and he has made the decision that it's worth missing out the Champions League to play in Saudi Arabia and be paid that money. A very interesting blog appeared on Acsom.net this morning talking about whether or not you are comfortable, Lawrence, with Celtic doing deals with Saudi Arabian football teams when you look at the nature of many of the culturally accepted practices over there. There's, as I say, a fantastic article on Acsom.net talking about sports washing. What's your thoughts on that, Lawrence? Is it going to be consigned to a footnote because this is football? And as Gordon Strachan once said, there are no morals in football.
Listen, we sell Coca-Cola in the stadium, don't we? You know, we don't go down a BDS route. Would I rather we didn't? Yes, but if a player wants to move, you really don't have a lot of control, do you? And if they're paying the top dollar, we've kind of got a, suppose, they're out for the borders, they've got a fiduciary duty to the shareholders to get what's the top money. You know, and if the top money's coming from there, I don't think they've got much option. Would you rather not do deals with Saudi? Yeah, but you know, there's a lot of clubs and businesses out there that if you to take the moral high ground, you wouldn't do deals with. And it'd be kind of very selective, I think, just to say, it's just Saudis we don't want to do deals with. You know, people might be looking at, I don't know, maybe Britain as a state. What Britain's contribute to the world. On that background, should we be doing deals with British clubs? You know, you can spin it any way you want, but I'm going to bow to Gordon Strachan's superior wisdom and just say, yeah, there are no morals in football and we've got to do what's best for Celtic.
It is true. That quote I was talking about, I'm sure it was during one of the finals, the World Cup finals, I think. And they were talking about, you know, certain players who had been charged with certain offences, and that's when he came out. It was just bold as brass, and that's what he said, and he was right. Of course, Jota, £25 million reported fee. Liam, we have heard that Benfica are either taking 30% of the fee or 30% of the profit. I'm not sure 100% which of those is accurate, but what we can say is that Celtic have made a cracking profit on a player who we only signed permanently 1 year ago. He's obviously going to be teaming up with superstars like Karim Benzema. He was the one that won the old Ballon d'Or, didn't he? Benzema. Aye. Strachan came fourth. And when I said to him, he goes, aye, I'm pretty sure I did, aye. Not interested in the slightest. And Kante, formerly of Chelsea, but he'll also be playing in the same league as his hero, Cristiano Ronaldo. Of course, when Jota arrived and we were at the press conference, he spoke about his adoration for Ronaldo. But I mean, yeah, fantastic in terms of the financial aspect of it. There's some concerns coming in about he's going to miss out the Champions League. Players probably don't look at that. Yeah, he's a wee bit younger than the two I've mentioned, Liam, but he's young enough to come back to Europe if that's his ambition.
Aye, I mean, actually, it's interesting. I read just before we went live. I read the Acsom blog that you're talking about, because this afternoon, without having read that, I actually wrote another piece for the blog, which will probably go live later today at some point, as soon as Kevin gets on it. And it's basically a counterpoint to that blog. I basically said, look, as Lawrence just said a minute ago, right, the Saudi regime is corrupt as hell. They torture people, they murder journalists, they mistreat their women. You know, this is all on record, right? America, Britain, Israel, all massive human rights violators as well, and ongoing human rights violators. Yet we have British nationals, we have an Israeli, and we have an American in the building, and nobody seems too bothered about that. It's also interesting to note, just on a wider picture of this, how the English media are going nuts just now about, you know, another country having the audacity to spend as much money as they do on football. It's funny how when a Russian gangster came in and did the same thing with Chelsea 15 years ago, nobody really cared in England. But now that a Muslim country is doing it, they're suddenly losing the plot. That's one for the Daily Mail readers of this world to think about.
Yeah, I'm not sure many of the Daily Mail readers tune into Acsom, by the way, Liam. But,
probably not, no.
But if you haven't been on the blog, as we were saying earlier, it's all free content. There's no adverts on there either. And people like Liam Carrigan have been contributing to it. I really enjoyed your 2 articles, Liam, on the tour and the match day experience over in Japan as well. We're coming back to that because obviously there's some developments on the other leg of that tour. But in relation to Jota, he won us 5 trophies out of 6. He's part of a treble-winning side, 83 games, 28 goals, 26 assists. More so than that, he got Lawrence Conley wearing double denim on Acsom as well. Lawrence, he was a fan's favourite. We can't take that away from him. We can't deny that.
But without doubt, mate. But I'll just remind you,
you wore it before him. Is that what you're going to say?
Long before Jota. I had the original Bumblebee top on that day. But not a copy. So,
was his definitely a copy? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
pretty good to me.
Look at the sponsor. It wasn't quite. I don't think it was the right material for the sponsor on his, compared to the original. So I think his is a copy.
Dear me, he's been doing the barras. Okay, Aaron Moy has retired. And this is a player, he retired last week. We kind of saw it coming, Lawrence. I'll come to you first on that because he was a player who, when we signed, many fans were underwhelmed. I'll ask you all to remind us what your reactions were when Aaron Moy came into the building. I thought he'd done a fantastic job under Ange Postecoglou last season over the piece. I know that he had his ups and his downs with his fitness and his form, but over the piece, I think he was a very shrewd buy. He came in at a time where we had lost Nir Bitton and Tom Rogic, who both brought completely different things to the Celtic midfield, elements of which I felt Moy brought in one player. It was a low-key arrival, but I think over the piece, Lawrence, he proved all the doubters wrong last season.
Look, my initial reaction was, squad player, Ange wants him, knows him, played for Australia, he'll be decent. And then I think that weekend I was down at Peter Scarf Club in Linwood and he had Chris Sutton on. And he just kind of summed up going, look, you've got £6 million player for free. What are people complaining about? So when you look at it that way, brilliant. And he came in and he did prove the doubters wrong. I think for a 2-month period, he was probably the best player in the team at one point. He really turned it on. Obviously, he's retiring. I think it's down to injury. You saw his recovery time wasn't. It took a bit of time for him to get back up to speed when he was injured. So you can only assume it's an ongoing injury. Why would he retire? But if he was still fit to play on, I'm sure if he could still play on, Jota's getting 200,000. I'm sure Moy would get at least 100,000 over there a week. But listen, wish him all the best. He retires a treble. What a way to go out, eh? After the career he's had, he's St Mirren, Huddersfield, China, and he saved the best for last.
He did. It was a wee peak at the end of his career. We're going to say that, Liam, obviously coming to Celtic, of course. But yeah, there were big doubters. Remind me, what was your take on Moy when you came? I thought you were quite supportive. I don't think Jared fancied him, did he?
No, it was interesting actually because on Celtic Down Under, Jared being our Australian colleague was like, no. Whereas me being the non-Australian on the show, I was like, actually, I think he's an all right player. But I definitely saw him as a squad player. I saw him as a sort of a James McCarthy type, to be honest. It's good that we got him for nothing, but I don't really expect much. And I'm delighted to have been proven absolutely wrong. I mean, has any other player in recent football history won a domestic treble and been like arguably his country's best player at the World Cup in the same season?
I know that.
Aaron Moy did that last season. He did all that, and he can sit back and retire, and in 20 years' time, he'll say, that was a good way to round off my career.
I can just imagine him on his porch just having a wee smoke at night, thinking about it. Because he seems that kind of guy. He's just so laid back, chilled out. He wasn't one of the guys that courted the media attention, Liam. He kind of bowed out in a low-key way as well. Yeah, thanks for the memories, Aaron. He was one of the guys who had a wee cameo in the history of Celtic Football Club, but a very important member of the team last season. We're just going to have a wee run through some of the guys that have left the building and, of course, some of the arrivals and who, if anybody, they are going to be replacing. Yesterday, Lawrence, I don't know if you had time to tune in, myself and Kevin Graham were chatting about who could be that player who gets the resurrection under Brendan Rodgers, who's the one to watch. And Kevin Graham, of course, in all our absolute wisdom, said Adam Montgomery, and about 40 minutes later he signed for Scott Brown down at Fleetwood. He'll be playing third-tier football down in England. He's only 20. He's going to turn 21 this month, Lawrence. But in doing the loan thing, what Montgomery has added to his Celtic appearances is 41 appearances for Aberdeen and St Johnstone, which is brilliant experience for him. And as I've said a few times on this show, St Johnstone fans, as notable as Stuart Cosgrove, were raving about him last season.
Yeah, but listen, when he came in, we were struggling for players for Celtic. He looked okay, the games he played for us. You could tell he needed a bit of development. He's been out there, got some of that. And I think getting down and working with Scott Brown will push him on even further. Hopefully he's still one for the future, but it's something we talk about. How do we develop our young players? Well, as the B team or the reserves, whatever you want to call it now, is it the right level of football they're playing there? Are they going to get enough competitive games? Because there's too big a jump, it seems, between that and the first team. So, yeah, loan seems to be the sensible way to do it. You maybe look at somebody like Stephen Welsh, who thinks probably time to move on. If he'd went on loan earlier, he may have served his career better, maybe even served his Celtic career better. May have got that experience to come in at a higher level. So, listen, all the best to Adam. I hope he really kicks one down there. But who could Brendan resurrect? I suppose it's who can he improve. I'm going to say I think he'll do a cracking job with Kobayashi and Matt O'Reilly.
Yeah, I agree with that, O'Reilly. Yeah.
Kobayashi struggled early in his career. I actually thought his early games were his better performances. I think when he struggled was more or less when the league was done, when the defence was changing. It was maybe Bernabé or Taylor, it was maybe Johnston or Ralston. Those better.
The Rangers one was a big game for him, Lawrence, wasn't it? The Rangers defeat.
I think everybody struggled then, and since it's come out, it turns out maybe the manager's focus wasn't. We weren't the sole thing he was focused on, shall we say? Maybe had other things occupying his thoughts at the same time. So, but listen, he's still got a bit to prove. But I thought his early games he looked better in a settled defence and in a settled team that who were playing for something at the time. The league was still there to be won. He looked a bit ropey, when the defence get changed up a bit. He was playing like the defence was unfamiliar. I think that was the first time four of them had played in the same team. So, yeah, I think Kobayashi and I think Matt O'Reilly. I think it would do wonders for Matt O'Reilly. Look at what he done for Callum first time round. So, I think you could do similar for Matt.
I think also you could probably throw Scott Brown, the aforementioned Scott Brown, into that mix as well. I thought he started performing really well under Brendan Rodgers as well. When you look at Montgomery, Liam, I seen a picture of him yesterday down there having signed. He definitely has physically bulked up. You can see it. He's got 40-odd games under his belt. I've been a big supporter of Celtic sending out players on loan to fellow Premiership clubs, a la Liam Scales, score us a goal against Rangers, save us a penalty against Rangers, that kind of thing. But I think Montgomery's done this. This is a different challenge for him, and he's going to a level of football that Matt O'Reilly was playing 2 or 3 seasons ago. So it's a good level. Yeah,
it's to be honest, if you've already kind of proven yourself in Scotland, outside of Celtic or Rangers, I think that the English Championship or League One is probably a similar level, but maybe there'll be more competition there because there's more teams that can win that league. Realistically, about 7 or 8 teams that are going to challenge for that title. And that breeds better competition. Whereas, with the greatest respect to St Johnstone, a fantastic season for them is finishing 7th. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's a new type of challenge because I imagine that Scott Brown is eyeing a promotion push with Fleetwood, and Adam Montgomery is going to play a big part in that, hopefully.
Yeah, and he'll join Scott Robertson, of course, down there as well, another ex-Celt, going down to Fleetwood. Scott Brown had a good debut season as a gaffer last season, and came into the FA Cup run that he had as well. He kind of came into the public notice at that point, sporting a slightly different hairdo, has got to be said, for Bruni. He has grown in the Fosh. Let's have a wee look at some of the guys coming in. But before we do that, we've got some comments. First up, IH decorating. Kyogo staying is a huge shot in the arm for the club and the fans. Had we lost Ange, Jota and Kyogo in the space of a month, it would have been very destabilising regardless of who was coming in. Great news. I totally agree with that. You know, if you think about it, today's bulletin would have been slightly different, I think, Liam, if that news went another way. Jason Lee, he's making 10 million quid a year. We're talking about Jota, of course, for the next 3 years. He will still be young enough to come back to Europe. Yeah, he definitely will. And David
the contract he's signed isn't long, is it? 3 years. I mean, would we sign him on a 4 with a 1 year option?
Mm-hmm.
So he's probably got an eye on coming back if he's only signing a 3, isn't he? Coming back to Europe, not to us.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think we could afford his wages. Anyway, David Boyle, Kyogo, Awata, Maeda, committed to the club, no exodus, which will have the rags crying in their tea. Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the guys that have come in. I'll start off with Odin Thiago Home. I listened with interest, actually, because I know James done a wee bit of digging on scouting reports, etc. It could be said that he could fill a couple of different roles in the team. It could even be a replacement for Aaron Moy, Lawrence, because you know Moy, he had the defensive qualities, he had the attacking qualities, and it looks as though this young guy has the same.
Yeah. Listen, it helps the team, be a bit more fluid on the part, doesn't it? They can play a number of positions. I'm trying to think of the last young midfielder his age we signed that went on and fulfilled the potential. Petrov definitely, wouldn't it? He seems to be highly thought of in Norway. It's just, can we give him the game time? Can he demand a position? Let's be honest, if you look at Abada, who may be on his way out, his numbers and his return for someone at 21's amazing. So if you get something like that promoting, yeah, it'd be great. Brendan, you'd have to say at the moment he's more accomplished coach than Ange. If you're looking for somebody to develop a player, Brendan's your man, isn't he? And that's probably the one thing about, I suppose, Ange's tenure is, it was only 2 years, but you'd heard that he's really great at developing youth. Could have maybe done with a wee bit more there from him. So, yeah, I don't know if it's an Ange legacy signing, if it's part of the new recruitment or way we do recruitment that Brendan was raving about. It's different from last time, that we can continue with managers moving on.
Yeah,
changes, we can handle that. Not everything falls apart just because a manager moves. So listen, he interviewed well. Yeah, big hopes for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's more Petrov than Thomas Ronja.
Yeah, big Thomas Ronja. I did meet him one time at Celtic Park. There's a great picture. I say it's a great picture. I'm going to share that. I'm going to dig it out from an old laptop. Me and Thomas Ronja outside Celtic Park, and I got a pair of match-worn shorts belonging to Thomas Ronja from a good friend of mine as well. But I don't know what they would fetch on the open market. I might have to test that at one of our charity evenings, Lawrence. But when you're looking at the career of Home, Liam, and I'm going to come to yourself, it is interesting what Lawrence says about the fact that Brendan Rodgers have got a really good track record of developing young players. Absolutely. But he also comes from Vålerenga, and he worked for a year under Ronny Deila, who I thought was brilliant at developing young guys as well.
Yeah, unfortunately for Ronny Deila, if it had been a club other than Celtic where you get more than a season to get it right, I think Ronny may well have went on to be a very, very good manager for us, because the seeds were definitely there. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out for him. But yeah, I think Norway is a good talent pool to tap into, despite what Scotland did to the national team recently. But no, I really do think that he, like you said, he spoke very well. He seems like a good prospect that Brendan Rodgers will love to work with and develop. And I'm excited to see what he can do. And he's another one that pre-season is going to be big, because is he going to be a backup, or is he going to be a genuine first team contender? That's, these are the things we don't know yet. We've got other players who we'll talk about later on that have come in recently, and the same questions are being asked. Who's going to be the main starters? Who's going to be the reserves? Because we talk about players having a renaissance under a new manager. There's also, like a Scott Sinclair under Neil Lennon that you talked about, there's always a couple of players that the new manager doesn't quite fancy, and they find themselves phased out. I wonder if there was something like that perhaps with Jota, in the sense that great player, but maybe not the type of player Brendan Rodgers wants for his Celtic team, so he wasn't too fussed about letting him go. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but that could be an issue there.
Yeah, and by the way, when you look at the deal, you think to yourself, right, we already had a kitty in place, and this is no doubt going to add to that. It's an interesting point I think Lawrence makes as well. Liam, I want to know your thoughts on this, whereby Ange Postecoglou comes in, and obviously that coincided with this upsurge in quality when it came to recruitment. But if you were to look at every player that came in under Ange Postecoglou, I think there's some obvious players that Ange has identified with his intricate knowledge of the Japanese market. There are others that are part of the recruitment policy that we've got. I mean, did Ange Postecoglou identify Carter Vickers? Did he identify Matt O'Reilly? Or even Abada? I don't know. But, you've got to take some credit for the recruitment team, some credit for Ange Postecoglou, and then when the manager leaves, as he has done, the recruitment team can still find these nuggets, all over the place in different markets. I'm pretty confident of that.
I mean, that was the I think the last time you and I were on together was a couple of weeks ago, just before it was confirmed officially that Brendan Rodgers was back. And I think I said then that my two big concerns were the reaction of the fans, but I think at his first press conference he did a good job of showing some contrition there and kind of getting around that. Enough to satisfy me, not satisfy everybody, but I'm happy to move forward after what he said. And my other concern was, are we going to pivot away from these new markets that we'd opened up under Ange? And then we go out and sign an Australian, and we also get heavily linked with a Korean. So I'm quite happy that clearly we're still looking in that part of the world. So hopefully we might see some more Japanese players in the future as well.
Well, that was a big criticism going back to Nakamura, and I know we brought in Kokai Mizuno, and I also know that Nakamura didn't come from the Japanese league when we signed him, but he obviously had developed there. And it was the frustration, really, Liam, of us not tapping into that market, from the departure of Nakamura to the arrival of Kyogo. Because I used to say to you, what about all the great players we missed out on that we could have brought over, but we didn't. And I just hope that doesn't happen again. I really think that now that we're in that market, we should stay in that market. And I don't know, in terms of the scouting over there, we should definitely have some kind of ambassadorial figure, I think, in Japan who could do a job for us. But we'll leave that down to the club. Just as we leave the
on weekends, just saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we could send over an Adidas bubble jacket for you, one of the big gaffers jackets, LC on this side there, and I'm sure you could identify a few for us. The other player, obviously, already in the building, Lawrence, is Marco Tilio, an Australian called Marco. Where have we seen that before? And he's a player who is exciting us on his show reels. Some people claim that any player could get a show reel, and I would argue that Kevin Graham couldn't, because he was never on the park. He was always carrying the water jugs and all that, and the hampers, lawns. But Marco Tilio, I think that when you look at what we've seen, he can play both wings, which is phenomenal, because I think that, and certainly in Ange Postecoglou's team, if you couldn't play one or two positions effectively, you got a lot less game time. But when you look at what he's done so far, he can play both wings, he can play through the middle. Melbourne City, 21 years of age, really, really cheap, 1.5 million quid. It's a case of farewell Moy, welcome Tilio. And when I look at some comments I've seen on social media about folk saying, the City group connections, as if it's a negative. That's not a negative at all. I mean, to be able to tap into that pool of players, that pool of talent and management, by the way, I think is great. If we can tap into that, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the City group, I think they'll have had a good grounding in professional football with them. But you're right, any player can have a show reel. I'm pretty sure I've seen yours, that one free kick.
There was two.
Multiple times.
There was a couple. There was two moments in my 45 years on this planet, Lawrence. I've done all right. Two moments.
But I can remember one of them. Yeah, no, listen, it's good. I think it's
By
great.
the way, though, sorry to interrupt, Lawrence, but the best moment on that showreel that didn't make it was when I almost ended the career of Alex Ray. Remember, you were there.
Yes.
That unfortunately didn't make the showreel. It was about waist high, wasn't it? That's the only reason I used to play in the games.
Great games. Bernie done a great job putting those on, didn't he? Hopefully
He did. He did.
Hopefully return. But no, Tilio is 21, goal scoring, attacking player. He's exciting, as you say. If he's not huge, yeah, it's a market that I think Jared, this particular player, indeed Jared's been going on about for some time, that Celtic should take the risk on. So I don't know if Tosh has been tuning in, maybe listening to Jared and thought, right, I'll have a wee wander over to Oz and see what this boy's about.
I always remember that there was a process put in place when Fergus McCann came to the club, Liam, and it was all around when we're scouting players, when we're going to sign a player, there was a rule. We must see the player. We've got to see them before we sign them, because Celtic have been stung in the past in relation to that. And he only broke the rule on one occasion whilst Fergus was there, believe it or not. And the player that he broke the rule with was Harold Bratback. And that was due to the fact that Wim Jansen assured Fergus McCann that he was the player that we needed. We always did our scouting, and we went and obviously watched the players. When Fergus left, that was clearly torn up because we went on to sign Rafael Scheidt from, who was it we signed him from in Brazil? Was it Grêmio? Grêmio in Brazil for about £5 million. But yeah, I like the look of this guy, and as we've said, you can make just about anybody look good in a showreel, but he's highly regarded. Jared's spoken highly of him. And as Jerry Taylor said last week, there was even a moment in his showreel where he slides in and keeps the ball in the park, and he looked good doing that as well. He does look like the real deal, and he looks as though, for me, and with the circumstances of Jota leaving and James Forrest game time getting more and more diminished, Liam, he could well be up for a first team starting jersey from the off.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Jared about this the other day, and he agreed with me. I said that over the last sort of year to 6 months, he has been as hyped for Telio as I was for Daisen Maeda before we signed him. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that worked out all right. So if he has the same impact that Daisen's had once he settles in, I think he'll do just fine. Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens, because he is I don't watch as much Australian football as I should, given the time zone that I'm in. But you know, I do catch a game now and again, and what I've seen of him, I've been impressed. Good.
Yeah, it'll be good to see, and he's got a Mouser as well, which, you know, it doesn't. Both new signings got moustaches. I'll need to check that. It must be something that's cool and trendy with the kids these days, Lawrence. I'm kind of out the loop, and when you're watching your host sporting a quite fantastic mullet, you really do know that you're out the loop. David Boyle watched an 11-minute reel of Odin Holm for 2022 season. Absolute baller, pace, power and aggression. Okay, now that's the kind of language we've been actually hearing from Brendan Rodgers, isn't it? Exactly what we needed in the midfield. I'm going to go back to the comments that were made. Lawrence, I'll ask you first. Go back to the comments that Ange Postecoglou made, trying to get us prepared for the loss of, at his words, one or two this summer. We've already lost Jota. It was a mouth-watering deal in terms of the amount of finance it's bringing to the club. We get all that, right? One or two. So there's still a bit of a concern. Kyogo was one of the guys that I was concerned about. I've got to say, he signed that deal superb. Fears absolutely allayed. Who are the others that you're concerned about? I've written 3 down here, and I want, obviously, over the next couple of weeks to get more from the club, more announcements, and it's Abada, Hatate and O'Reilly. That's the 3 I'm a wee bit concerned about. Lawrence, do you think any of those 3 will leave the building?
Looks like Abada is, you know, there's rumours that he's not happy with the new contract put in front of him. So, yeah, it looks like he might leave. I'd be worried about Alistair Johnson. Not that I think he particularly wants to leave, but clubs tend to come in for your better players. And he's been phenomenal since we brought him over. So, if there's clubs looking for a right back, and I've seen his performances, you know, I think he much better than Juranovic. You know, so Juranovic has went on and improved himself decent to, or more than decent since he's left us. So other clubs might be looking and going, well, where did Juranovic come from? Wait a minute, they've got a guy that was better than him. much would he be? So it's the model of a club, though. We're a selling club. You know what? I'm just preparing to saying 1 or 2. Well, that's not a secret. You know, we promise these guys, come here, do well, we'll sell you on. You know, it's potential stepping stone to the EPL or maybe Saudi next year. We're saying it's a potential stepping stone. You know, that's how I've been probably since the latter tenure of McCann, or just after McCann left. You know, when things kind of, I suppose, you know, going on the days when we're signing players like Stubbs, you know, that top English clubs were after.
Yeah,
no longer able to compete at that level. So, you know, this is a promise to players. We've got to get used to it, you know, and obviously it's happened with managers recently as well. So I don't know if he's preparing us or just reminding us, but yeah, we all know that kind of players leave. It's how well the recruitment team do in replacing them, how robust the club structure is to handle that, you know, particularly with managers. So listen, it's where we are as a club. We're still Celtic, you know, these guys go on. You know, you wish them the best. Thanks for your contribution. You're just hoping the board reinvest the money that's come in. You know, they're giving it to Brendan and saying, look, Brendan, you know, we've just brought in whatever the profit is in Jota, you know, that's added to your kit.
Well, this is a big thing, Lawrence. The key element here is the quality of recruitment. And you know, even though we were dominating Scottish football for 9 years there, you know, some would argue we dominated Scottish football for 20 years, and I totally get that. But the 9 in a row period specifically, Liam, I thought that, we had some fantastic signings, but, you know, we wasted a lot of money, you know, and the recruitment, people always counter this by saying, oh, you can't get them all right. We know that, but look at the record in the last 2 years. There's been a few flops, I would suggest. Yeah, but we've got more right than not. And I think that is really focusing, again, it's shining a light on the quality of the recruitment. And that's got to be right for this model to work. And it is working. This is a big thing. And as you're saying, Lawrence, the only constant of this football club is the support. And we know that, and we totally appreciate it. And in relation to the likes of Abada, Hanatati and O'Reilly, and Lawrence has thrown in a fourth there. Cheers, Lawrence, just to heighten the anxiety even further. Are there any in there that you think might leave the building this pre-season, Liam?
Hatati concerns me a wee bit. Again, it might be nothing. It might just be me being paranoid. But I watched when Hatati, Maeda, and Kyogo arrived in Japan for the Japan friendlies a couple of weeks ago. Kyogo was very upbeat, talking about how he wants to do well with Celtic in the Champions League next season. In hindsight, I'm assuming the deal announced today had already been agreed in principle by that point. Hatati was much more like, oh yeah, you know, good season, but I'm here to do my job for Japan. Much more downbeat, much more kind of like... Now, I haven't seen that many interviews with Reo Hatati. He might just be quite a sullen guy generally. I don't know. But he did seem a bit kind of, this is a guy who might be for the off, you know? But I could be completely wrong, and I hope I am. I think Abada is going to go one of two ways. Once Brendan Rodgers gets a look at him, has a chat with him, he's either going to rate him enough that he gets the contract he wants, or Brendan Rodgers will say, right, okay, cheerio. And that'll happen probably within the next 2 weeks, I reckon. Because I think Rodgers will appreciate the fact that we don't have any qualifiers this season for the Champions League to worry about. So we basically have until August to get our house in order for the first league game, August 6th, I believe it is. So we are going to be full speed ahead with getting new players in and also getting the ones that want a way out. Hopefully, as I said before, I'd like to have the main structure of the team going forward for the new season in place by the time they come to Yokohama, which is 2 weeks tomorrow. So.
Yeah, a lot of work to be done. I'm going to bring in a few more comments, but because Lawrence brought up Alistair Johnson, thankfully I didn't call him Anthony today. I was in a habit of calling him Anthony Johnson for a while. Alistair Johnston, right? Do you see his role changing slightly at Celtic, do you think, Liam, with the inverted fullbacks being a very Ange thing? And I don't think Brendan's known for playing the inverted fullback role like that. Alistair Johnson, I would actually suggest, maybe controversially, that he would be better in a more traditional fullback role.
he's shown that he's got it going forward. But primarily, I'd be most impressed with his defensive qualities, his tackling, his aggression, his decision making. So yeah, he strikes me as more of a traditional right back as opposed to a wing back or an inverted full back, as you call it. Yeah, he can get forward, he can hit a cross. He's good with that. But yeah, I think that particularly for Europe, we're going to look at more of a solidified defence this season. And I think Johnson is going to be instrumental to that. He's one of the players that has impressed me the most since he came in. I really like what I see with that guy. I love his attitude as well. I love his approach to, getting stuck right in, and the photos of him swigging the wine after the post-match conference, whatever. It's just that's the sort of guy that's living the dream. That'll do for me.
He brings a lot of fight to the team. A lot of aggression. Maybe something the team's missing. If you're in that team, you're thinking, who's going to be the first guy to back me up? It's going to be
Rosie has the same effect on me, I know.
And the thing,
don't have any of that sword around then.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And remember, he was on that platform. I think it was Hatate he was talking to whilst Ange was giving his big speech and all that. And he's turned around to Hatate and apparently said, he's gone. Remember, we all became lip reading experts at that point as well. Lawrence. I was arguing that he was actually saying he's the Don, but, I was wrong. How much different will Rodgers' team be then, Lawrence, in terms of the style? Because, looking at the conferences that he's done since he came back, you're looking at words and descriptive terms that he's using, and he is talking about, strength and power, that kind of thing, the aggression that he wants to bring to this team. How much different is this team going to look this season than last? And I don't mean personnel, I mean style, shape. How do you see Rodgers lining up?
But one of Brendan's press conferences, he was talking about, his time in the Premiership after leaving, and so he's learned to be more pragmatic. So I think there's Rodgers' journey as well from when he was last here. So, he said that's part of his growth journey. And I think Liam's touched on it. In Europe, I think we'll be more pragmatic. We'll play the game more in stages rather than, just attack. Just that. Because remember, against Real Madrid, they came out and said, we knew Celtic would be at us from the off. They came out really strong. We just had to weather that storm, then we could get into the game. They'd planned kind of, call it rope-a-dope or whatever, but we wanted to let us blow ourselves out. I think Brendan will be, I think he's going to be more pragmatic. But expect us to be faster, but Brendan seemed to look like real speed, from his front three. So I think that's maybe Liam's touched on it. He could develop Maeda because it's the quickest guy at Park. I think he'll really suit what Brendan does. So inverted fullbacks, Brendan will have had a look at every game from the last two seasons. Have had a look at this team, and if he thinks that's something he can use during the game, I think it's a tactical variant. I don't think he'll be as rigid as Angelo and setting out the same way all the time, inverted fullbacks all the time. I think he'll mix it up a bit more.
That would be interesting, because it's something that we did well. We utilised it well, Lawrence. Even if you change it, it's something that you've got up your sleeve should you wish to use it as a tactical change in game. I think that's a great point. Gordon, Coney, you're one of 1,300 strong on the live stream. Thanks everybody for getting involved. If you want to comment, just subscribe to the channel alongside the 22.4 thousand who are already subscribing on YouTube. Thanks everybody for your support. Just back from Salou yesterday. Hope you had a good holiday, Gordon. Only to be hit by the news of Jota's departure. But what a difference 24 hours makes from disappointment to jubilation. So glad Kyogo has committed his future to us. Thank you very much, Gordon, for your input. And we've also got the Urban Culture. We are now back in the race to win the pre-season cup. We've pulled one back, absolutely. And Celtic follower, delighted Kyogo has signed a new deal. The new FIFA offside rule couldn't come at a better time. I wonder when we'll see Rodgers first signing. Rodgers first signing, indeed, one that you could probably point to as definitely being identified by Rodgers. What do you see as the main differences next season under Brendan Rodgers in terms of the style and the approach, Liam?
I definitely think we'll see a slower build-up. Rodgers' style of football is always more possession-based, whereas Ange was like, get the ball, get it up to the goal, and create chances as quickly as you can. it's unfortunately, and it's just a personal thing, but I think Ange's team would have been more entertaining to watch. But I think that Rodgers will ultimately get us better results in the long run, particularly in Europe. Ange was a magnificent manager for us, rebuilt us from an absolute shambles into a treble-winning team in less than 2 years. Incredible, and I will always personally be, grateful to the man for that. But in Europe, we did kind of get found out, and I think the main reason Brendan Rodgers agreed to come back is because he sees a pathway to rectifying that. So I think, the main difference is going to be this kind of stoicism, a kind of a slow, methodical build-up, bit more aggression, bit more physicality. That's what the likes of Holm have come in for, and where I think Iwata could carve a niche for himself as well. And I think we might not be quite as attractive, but I think we'll get the job done probably more effectively next season.
Yeah, it's going to be good to see. I'm going to stay with you for a second, Liam, because we mentioned earlier on about the pre-season tour. Of course, before we go to Japan, what a life these footballers have got. They've got a Portuguese warm weather camp. That sounds fantastic. They've lined up 2 games against Portimonense. Sorry if I've got that pronunciation wrong. And the big question on everybody's lips, obviously, is will Anton Rodgers be playing in these pre-season games in Portugal? Liam Carrigan, what's your thoughts?
I have no idea.
Where is he now? Who's he playing for? Anybody know? I bet it's about the seventh tier of English football, I bet, right? But obviously the big concern, I guess, about the pre-season is the South Korean leg of that. Looks to have been thrown into a bit of disarray. Wolves cancelled, the Roma's out. And then there was a suggestion that we'd be playing a team called Incheon United, who have come back saying that's not happening. It looks as though it could be doomed. What's your thoughts on that, Liam? Has there been an update?
Right, important preface here. The reason why we're able to play these 2 friendlies in Japan when we are is because the J League has a 2-week break in July because it's just too damn hot to do anything in the daytime. So we are taking advantage of that. Yokohama are playing us on the Wednesday, then they're playing Man City on the Saturday, the same day we play Osaka. But the Daily Record, or maybe it was the Sun, I can't remember, but whoever it was, must have won the grand prize last week for the most irresponsible headline and back page presentation in journalism I've seen in recent years. Celtic Asia Tour chaos and a big photo of Kyogo. So I call up, my initial thing was, oh my God, I've just paid like a couple of £100 for both tickets for both of these games. What's happening? It was the Korean game. Organised by a completely separate entity from the people organising the game in Japan. Now, I've been on record as my issues with them grossly overcharging for ticket prices in Japan, but that's a side issue. The clear implication of that headline, the way it was presented, and the big photo of Kyogo was to imply that something was up with Celtic's Japan tour. Mm-hmm. It isn't. It's the Korean leg only that is affected. And because Korea, I think, does not have that same mid-season break the J-League does, that's why we were playing Wolves rather than playing a Korean team. So it's going to be much more difficult for us to organise other opposition there. So I think that game's probably going to get cancelled. I'm already going on the assumption that it is being cancelled. But the reality is that, pre-season friendlies in Korea, if you look at the fixture list, tends to be one foreign team against another. You don't often see Korean teams playing in these so often because they are in the middle of their season at that point, and it's not really appropriate to take time out to play a glamour friendly.
No, but you're right. There was that initial panic. And if anybody's not read the 2 blogs on Japanese, in terms of the Japanese tour and also the way that we are tapping in or otherwise to the Japanese market, then check out Acsom.net because Liam's done a couple of brilliant blogs over the last week or so. I'm keen to get more comments coming in, so I'm going to do that before going back to Lawrence Connolly. Mark Connolly, on the other hand, says Kyogo is the best Celtic striker since Larsson, and if he stays for the duration of his contract, he will become a legend. So there will be people out there, Lawrence, who come to Celtic and still become legends, and that's great to hear as well. Now, the Pork Chop Express, fantastic name, fantastic avatar, 19 likes, 1 count, or I count, sorry. Yes, we've got about 1,300 watching. Give us a big thumbs up on YouTube if you enjoy what we do and you want to get involved in what Acsom does, both online and also be kept up to date with what we're doing on the live circuit as well. The DJ of choice comes in to remind us that Scotland are not using the new offside rule. Only 3 countries are trialling it presently. And also Barca Boy, AJ didn't come inside, only Taylor did. That's why I think, Barca Boy, that's why I think he's going to be better suited probably to Brendan Rodgers. His approach. And Robert Wallace, will we break the £12 million transfer barrier? I got round to your comment, Robert, because I want to throw this to the lads, starting with yourself, Lawrence. I'm not interested in breaking transfer records, because I said just the other day there, I said to Kevin Graham that, you know, when Jota came to this club, and albeit on loan initially, he wasn't what we would consider a £25 million player, obviously. He wasn't somebody that we largely broke the bank for. I know that signing the 2 players at the same time later for about 13 million was you know, it was ambitious. It was, for us, it was very, very positive, because we were talking about we're going to sign one of them. There's no way we're going to get the 2 of them, and we did. I think our model doesn't necessitate a £12 million transfer. I don't think it requires us to go out there and smash the current club transfer record, which is £9 million for Edouard. What's your thoughts on that, Lawrence?
Well, yeah, you know, the model's not about breaking a transfer record. It's about buying and selling for a profit. Well, if we buy, the more we spend on a player, generally, the better player he is and better potential he has. You know, is a rule. Problem is that comes with an expectation on his salary, doesn't it? And I don't think we should break it for the sake of breaking it. But if the recruitment team identifies something and say, look, you know, this boy's 13 million, but in 2 years' time, he'll be 35 million. That fits a model. 13 million, though, it's a bigger risk, isn't it? It's bigger than risking the 6 million in terms of what we've got to spend. So we need to temper that. It's a huge step up in risk for us. You know, as you said, we get Carter Vickers and Jota for 12, so to spend 13 in one, it is a bigger risk. But if the recruitment team in Brendan had the faith in a player like that, then why not? You know, why not do it? But we don't need to be too focused on how much we're spending on a player, more that he fits a model in terms of the team and how he fits into where Brendan sees him playing, and that we can develop and sell him at a profit, regardless if that's kind of buying him at 13 and selling him at 35, or buying at 6 and selling it at 25.
I get that. I mean, when we signed Edouard, of course, Liam, I think he was maybe 20 by the time we signed him permanently after a brief loan spell, coming from the PSG Academy, £9 million. If Celtic were to go out and buy somebody of that kind of age, at that level of their development, 19, 20, 21, at 10 million, I wouldn't really have a concern with that. I wouldn't, because you're thinking we can still do a turn on this player, we can still make a profit eventually on this player. But there does seem to be something of a clamour about us chucking this money at, you know, during this transfer window. I just don't think it's necessary.
We need to be careful. I was having a chat about this with a friend of mine who's a West Ham supporter the other day, and you know, they are, you know, by the time this show is over, it might be a done deal that Declan Rice is going to go to Arsenal for 100 million. And I said to him, okay, you've got 100 million to spend, but the problem is everybody now knows you've got 100 million to spend.
That's true.
So the player you could have got yesterday for 20 million is suddenly 40 million. You know, and we need to be a wee bit careful there, because people know we've got mega bucks because we've just offloaded Jota. But I think there's a very narrow profile of player that we could spend that much money on. It needs to be someone who is outstanding and justifies that kind of fee. But it also needs to be somebody, I would say, younger than maximum 23, 24 years old. Because you want to be looking at selling him in 2 or 3 years' time for more than that 10 to 15 million or whatever you paid for them. So how many players are Celtic looking at in that price bracket who also fit that age profile, and who also Brendan Rodgers is confident he can develop into something even better than they already are? That's a very, very narrow field to be operating in. I'm not saying we're not going to do it, but I would rather we didn't. I'm happy for us to continue in the sort of 4, 5, 6 million category, and I would rather. Well, I'm gonna quote a 23-year-old statistic for you here. What would you rather have? 35 Henrik Larssons, or 256 Didier Agats, or 1 Toriandri Flo?
How many Didier Agats? 265.
256. My mate and I worked out in the pub one night when we were bored.
That's brilliant.
I'm not saying that's guaranteed, because I did fail my maths higher, just so we're aware, okay?
But we get the point, absolutely. And by the way, Anton Rodgers is now plying his trade for Basingstoke Town, who I think are in the 7th or 8th tier of English football. So good luck to you, Anton. And I'm still not sure whether or not you actually were named after Anton Rogan, or if that was just one of Brendan's wee stories. Please do remember to like the video on YouTube and subscribe if you want to comment and get involved in the chat. Things are heating up. We have brought in Brendan Rodgers, and we have just signed a new deal with Kyogo. Yes, we've lost Jota and Ange, but things are moving in the right direction, if you ask me. Just a reminder as well, Lawrence Conley enjoyed our evening with Gordon Strachan on Friday. I've had loads of people from far-flung places like yourself, Liam, saying, listen, we feel a bit left out. Is there any plans to stream these events? I think that's a fantastic idea, and it is something I would like to do in the future. There's a few wee things we need to consider, one being the fact that these live events are very much easy flowing, Lawrence, aren't they, where people like to tell the stories and give you the grisly details sometimes, and we do ask for no phones to be in operation during the guests' time on the stage. That would maybe, I think, detract from the night, actually, Lawrence, rather than add to the night if you were live streaming it, because people might start watching what they're saying. So yeah, we do have subscribers from all over the planet, Celtic fans from all over the planet, and they would like to watch Gordon Strachan in full flow, but you might not get them in full flow if it's being filmed. So bear with us on that. We do hope to live stream something from one of our live events in the future. Roy Aitken is our next guest. Tickets are going well for someone who doesn't appear that often on the live circuit. Lawrence, I'm going to ask you your favourite memories of Roy Aitken. We spoke about a few of them yesterday. There are many.
85 cup final, pushed into midfield.
Down the right-hand
side. Yes, pushed into midfield, just turned the game, didn't he? It's just
what a cross that was. See when you watch that back from McGavie.
The header's absolutely ridiculous, though.
I know.
From Frank, isn't it? It just gets better every time you watch it. Roy, only child of Celtic Football Club. We had to adopt him to play in East Germany.
That's right. Sean Fallon was the manager at the time, sitting in for Jockstein, who was in hospital recuperating. Yeah. That's right, yeah. Youngest ever Celt when he made his debut at 16.
Absolutely, phenomenal. For his, I think Roy will say that part of the reason he left was that the Men in Black, wasn't it? It was just what sounded about
it. Yeah, he spoke out about it. Mm-hmm. He did. He spoke out about that. 1990.
Penalty will get given. There's absolutely nothing. Rangers got a penalty that will shock people. But but yeah, what a competitor Roy was, wasn't he? Wholehearted, to say the least.
Oh, he was brilliant. And I mean, growing up, we used to go to Butlins and Ayr. That was our holiday destination for all those people in the comments coming home from Salou.
He's up the coast, isn't he? Saltcoats he was from.
Yeah, yep. And he used to come to Butlins and playing like 5-a-side tournament. Can you imagine that, Liam, right? The captain of the club. I'm going to Butlins, Billy, I've got a 5-a-side tournament. And he would come and play and get his photo taken with the kids and all that. Brilliant. Great memories.
There was a story in the Shamrock about the mass Celts guesting in a team. If no one's getting the Shamrock magazine, get it. Speculation about who these... Cause I think Jimmy Johnston was maybe one of them. Yeah. Players playing with masks on so it's like a guest in this team.
because they were getting such a good fee during the summer months. Brilliant. Liam, Roy Aitken, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to join us on the night. But, I grew up with Roy Aitken. Roy Aitken was almost omnipresent. And when you look at the chronology where things started to go wrong, losing Roy Aitken and Tommy Burns in quick succession was a massive part of that, because we lost a lot of experience. He seems to have been ever present. He was always there. I always expected him to come back as a manager. He never did.
Yeah, it's funny that how you see some players who you think, oh God, he's never going to make it as a manager, and they go on to do great things. I mean, the late great Craig Brown being a classic example. Very mediocre player, fantastic manager. Roy Aitken was one that he was such a leader on the park that I always, like you say, I always thought he would go on to become an absolute star as a manager. And, he's done coaching here and there, but he's never really been he's never had that big kind of breakout managerial role, which really surprises me, because I don't remember too much about him, because my first Celtic game wasn't until 1992, so just after he'd left. But, watching old videos and whatever, you can see what a player he was and what a leader he was. And I'm amazed that hasn't really translated into management.
But did they win a League Cup for Aberdeen as manager?
Against Dundee?
I think he did. I knew you say that.
Then was it
Coca-Cola Cup, as it was there.
Was it not? Eventually, he was number 2 to O'Leary, wasn't he?
He moved about.
Rather than that, maybe the money was better down south.
He gave us $750,000 million for Brian O'Neill. So he done all right at Aberdeen.
Brian O'Neill was all right, mate.
$750,000 between two Scottish clubs at that time. That was big money.
Yeah.
But as you say, he did. He won the League Cup. I think it was 2-0 against Morton Vicorst's Dundee, and the man of the match was presented with a Coca-Cola mountain bike. I don't know if you remember that. Those were the days, lads. Those were the days.
I mean, don't tell me a club done something mental like put that Coca-Cola mountain bike in their trophy cabinet. That'd just be ridiculous. Putting bikes in their trophy cabinet.
Who would do that? Come on. Alan Woods, Big Roy, my first hero. If you want to come along and see or even meet Roy Aitken, there is an option for you to meet him and get your photograph taken, get a free gift, etc. Then the ticket link is underneath the video. We do one of these gigs every single month. They're fantastic, every single one. I've got to say, Strachan so far, no disrespect to anybody we've done them with, has been my personal favourite, and I'm pretty sure Roy Aitken will be up there as well. And I'll ask him about the management thing, Liam, because it's always intrigued me. And then when he finished the managerial side of things, like Lauren said, he was more of a number 2 to the likes of David O'Leary, etc. So thank you everybody for getting involved. It's very positive at the moment. I'm not feeling negative. I'm not feeling like everything's getting torn up here. I do think as though we are building something that's just going to look a wee bit different next season. Thanks everybody for getting involved in the comment section. Remember to like and subscribe on the YouTube. And I've got to say once again, Liam Carrigan, Lawrence Connolly, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.